Well, grocery costs are outpacing the overall inflation rate, according to figures released by UBS economists. Fresh food prices climbed to 10% in April, while dry grocery goods were up 9.4%. Analysts say consumers are switching to use brand alternatives in droves to ease household budget strains, but say the cost of many food staples should decline by the year's end. Well, joining me now live is Assistant Treasurer and Financial Services Minister Stephen Jones. Minister, thank you for joining us. So food inflation has reached a new peak. It's certainly not getting any easier for Australians. You've had 1 year now in the job. Have you done enough to help Aussies pay for their groceries?
Look, there's no doubt that the war in Ukraine and the increase in energy prices is passing through to the cost of anything. We know that households are doing it tough. It's why in our budget last week, we had to balance the need to ensure we didn't make a bad situation worse by stoking inflation, but also provided targeted cost of living relief to households who are doing it tough. Our energy price relief, for example, the medicines policy, which is cutting the price of medicines, and our record investment into Medicare will provide relief to households. Of course, in a few weeks' time, our revolutionary changes to the way how childcare is funded will make a significant difference to households with children as well. And this comes on top of what we're doing to get wages moving again. The first thing we did when coming into office was to ensure that workers on minimum wages got a $40 a week pay increase. And our reforms to workplace relations law will make it easier for workers to bargain for an increased wage increase as well. But all of that is what we can do. We can't control what's going on in international energy markets. We can't control the war in Ukraine. What we can do, ensure that what we do is not make a bad situation worse and provide targeted relief where we can here in Australia.
Are grocers profiteering?
Look, I haven't seen evidence of that yet. I know that this is one of the first things that people will always ask, but we'll want to ensure we'll keep a close eye on what's going on in those, particularly the large grocery chains, the big two that dominate the grocery chains, to ensure that that's not occurring. No evidence of that at the moment, but it's something you always want to keep an eye on.
OK, let's move on now. At least 23 aged care homes have shut their doors since September. The sector says it's simply struggling with Labor's stringent reforms. Has Labor done too much too soon in the sector?
What the sector is struggling with, as many employers are around the country, is attempting to get workers to fill vacancies. Right around the country, we know there are workforce shortages, particularly in aged care and in the care economy. That's why in last week's budget, our record investment in the aged care sector, in fact, the largest single new measure in the budget was to pay for aged care wages. That'll lift the pay for the key jobs within the aged care sector and make it a more attractive place for people to work. I think I also need to make the point, it's obvious that, and natural that when aged care facilities close, we focus on that. But it is a fact that more have opened over the last 2 years than have closed. I think there's about 46 new aged care centres that have opened, facilities that have opened in the last 2 years, about 11 of those in regional areas. And there's been an increase in aged care beds over the last 12 months as well. I think over 6,000 new aged care beds. So I'm not saying that it's not tough in the aged care sector, and we know that more needs to be done to get more staff into aged care centres and to help meet the increasing demand. Yeah. But I think you'll see through everything we've done is a government that is very focused on the issues here.
But by bringing forward the timeline to implement the changes recommended by the Royal Commission, have you set the sector up to fail in the first instance?
What we've done is provide increased support to the aged care sector. I don't think there's anyone out there who would read those findings of the Royal Commission where they say people are malnourished, that people have less than 4 minutes a day to provide all the care, the showering, the bathing, the medication relief, the dealing with bed sores and all the rest of it. I don't think anyone would read a report like that and said, oh, well, we've got all the time in the world to respond to it. And we've got all the time in the world to demand a higher standard of the aged care sector. If you've got loved ones in an aged care sector, you want those reforms implemented immediately. Now, a lot of this stuff we can't do immediately. We're working with the sector to increase the standards, but I think you'll find when there are issues in aged care sector broadly, the Australian people want us to move on that as quickly as possible.
All right, we're running out of time, but just quickly, yesterday, of course, you announced reforms to the Buy Now, Pay Later scheme. Consumer groups have raised concerns that adopting, I guess, a tailored version of it won't be enough to protect vulnerable Australians. How confident are you that you've struck the right balance here?
Oh, I'm very confident we've got the right balance. I've seen the responses from consumer groups who widely and generally support the move that the government has taken to lift the bar, to increase standards in lending, in buy now, pay later. Welcomed by industry, welcomed by consumers. Some groups will always want a little more and others a little less, but I think we've got the balance right, which will ensure that we still have competition in credit markets and ensure that at the same time consumers are protected. That's what this government's all about.
All right, big reforms, that's for sure. Stephen Jones, thank you so much for joining us.